Good afternoon, everyone. A very warm welcome to our East Asia Asian and Counselor online briefing section today. Many thanks to you all for taking time to join our section today. My name is Hiền Lê. I'm Education Service Manager of British Council Vietnam. In this section, we will cover all the information which is very useful to help you to update about the current situation in the UK and how you best advise your students for this academic year and beyond. Now I would like to introduce Leighton Asperger, Director of Education and English from British Council Singapore, who will give you the opening remarks of this event. Leighton, over to you.
Thank you, Hien, and hello everyone. On behalf of the British Council, I would like to welcome all agents, school counsellors and representatives from UK organisations from across East Asia to this special online briefing on current situation in the UK and how best to advise your students for the 2021-22 academic year and beyond. You may have already seen the news that the situation in the UK is continuing to improve following the successful rollout of the vaccination scheme. The briefing today will be an ideal opportunity for all of us to hear the latest updates directly from UK institutions, from the Boarding Schools Association and the British Universities International Liaison Association, otherwise known as BULA, on how they have prepared to welcome international students this academic year. You may also have received a lot of questions regarding updates on the UK student visa and immigration regulations. We are pleased to have an expert with us today from UK Visas and Immigrations, otherwise known as UKVI, to give you the latest information and to answer all of your questions. We hope that the briefing today will help you in giving advice to students and parents. The UK has always welcomed students from East Asia and from across the globe. Despite the pandemic, the UK borders have never closed to students, and UK schools and universities have worked very hard to ensure student safety and maintain the high quality of their education offer. Last but not least, I would like to thank you all for your continued support in promoting UK education in East Asia, and we hope to work with you more closely in our future activities and initiatives. Thank you all, and handing back to you, Hien.
Yeah, thank you, Leighton. Thank you very much. Now I'd like to introduce you to Ms. Daira Malhotra, Customer Accountant Managers of UKVI.
Thank you, Jan. And good afternoon, everyone. Let me pronounce my name correctly. My name is Divya Malhotra, and I represent UK Visas and Immigration. And I am the Customer Account Manager for Education sector for South and Southeast Asia region. So I'm really glad to be part of today's briefing with Southeast Asia counsellors and agent. And in today's webinar, I'll be covering the details about the student visa application requirement, the bits about the graduate route, and the most important, the current travel guidelines and England traffic light system. So let me try and share the presentation with you now. Okay, so let me start straight away with the document requirement for the visas application. So what you see on your screen right now is basically a social media post which summarizes the requirement for the student visa application. The requirements are an offer letter from an approved education institution, which is the university. Students should be able to speak and understand English, and students should be able to support themselves financially. That is, submit the funds, the required funds for the maintenance funds to be shown. So I'll talk in details about each of them in my coming slides. In terms of the document, the requirement is, of course, your current and valid passport. You need a CAS letter which bears the CAS reference number, which is issued by the university to apply for the online visa. And then the proof of finances, the funds requirement to be shown, and I'll discuss about the finances as well in my slide, in my next slide. Tuberculosis test result is required in most of the countries of South East Asia, so it is required for Thailand and probably one or two countries, which is like Singapore, may not need it. Otherwise, all the Southeast Asian countries need to submit the tuberculosis test certificates as well. The documents that you also might need to submit would be your academic or the educational documents, which are listed in the CAS by the university. So UKVI would verify those documents. You should be able to submit the proof of English as required by the university. So the English level is generally assessed by the universities. So if they're asking for certain level of English test, you should be able to submit that. You might also need to submit the relationship proof and the proof of consent by the parents or the legal guardians if the student is under the age of 18 or a minor. ATAS certificate is required in some specific engineering courses. So if that's the requirement, the student will need to submit this before actually applying for the visa. So these are the requirements in terms of the documents. Talking about the funds in my next slide. So they need to evidence the funds requirement for applying for a student visa. If the university is in London, so the requirement is £1,334 each month for up to 9 months. So this calculates to about £12,006 as a requirement, which needs to be available and needs to be shown while applying. If the university is anywhere outside London, so the requirement is £1,023 for each month up to 9 months. So this comes to around £9,700, £9,207 approximately. So this amount they should be able to show in their bank account statements. It can be done either in three ways. Either they can show through their own funds in the savings bank account or the current bank account, that those are acceptable. It can be shown through a student loan, which is taken by the bank. So if the student has availed the student loan from the bank, they can show that unconditional letter issued by the bank. Or it could be through a financial or government sponsorship or scholarship. It could be it could be partial sponsorship or it could be a full sponsorship. It depends the amount that you've been sponsored for, and the rest of the amount has to be shown in the account, in the savings account or the current account. So that's the requirement. If the funds are being shown through current account, the account has to be in the name of the student, not in name of a company or an institution. Further, in savings account, the 28-day consecutive days financial rule is applicable. The funds should be maintained. So let's say if the university is in Leeds and you're showing £9,207, this amount has to be maintained in the savings bank account for at least 28 days, 28 continuous days. And when you take out the statement from the bank, the statement should not be older than 31 days of applying for your online visa. So you need to keep, the students need to keep these dates in mind while applying. So the statement should not be older than 31 days on the date of online application. So that's about the funds. I'll move on, which talk about the important topic, which is the graduate route. As you might all be aware already that the UK government has already launched the graduate route starting this month, 1st of July 2021, as promised. And this route allows students who have successfully graduated and completed their course in UK, they will be able to stay in further in UK for 2 years or 3 years for doctoral students. During this period, they can work or look for work or do short supplementary courses as well. There isn't any sponsorship required during this period and doesn't need any sponsorship from the university or either from any of the employer. It's a sponsorship free period wherein the students can benefit out of it and gain experience in different work areas. The clause for this is it doesn't lead to settlement. So the period of 2 years or 3 years, it wouldn't accrue any settlement rights. So that would be accrued only if you are work visa. The application fees for the graduate route would be £700. So the application fees for this would be £700 along with the IHS fees, which is the full IHS fees, that is £624 that needs to be paid by the student for applying for the graduate route. What are the eligibility conditions for this is that this is an in-country application process. The student must be in UK while applying for the graduate route. The student must have the valid student visa. It shouldn't have run out before applying for the graduate route. Another eligibility criteria is at least 1 year of academic year in UK, and they should be holding the 12-month students visa. So this is for the students who will be applying this autumn and in January 2022. As you might already be aware that we did certain exemptions for the students last year due to the pandemic, and they are exempted and they can continue with the online courses and the remote courses. However, they need to be in UK now by 27th of September. Only then they'll be eligible for the graduate route. However, for the new students who are enrolling this year and next year, the deadline is 6th of April 2022, and the condition of 1 academic year in UK and 12 months of student visa. There are some qualifications which does not lead to the degree, some courses in law or accountancy, so they will also confer the graduate route. So they are also eligible for the graduate route. So what are the conditions, visa conditions for this route? Once they apply for this, once they get the graduate route visa, so as I mentioned earlier, they can work at any level other than some restricted professions. There is no minimum salary criteria to be eligible for this. They can work, they can look for work and do multiple roles as well. However, they'll not be able to access any of the public funds while they're in UK during the graduate route period. Supplementary study is allowed, however, it shouldn't be a student-sponsored route like the student route, wherein they need sponsorship from the university. All the students who are going for the postgraduate course, their dependents are, and they are taking along their dependents, they are also eligible for the graduate route. That is, dependents already in the UK with the student as a student dependent, they may apply as a dependent of a graduate route at the same time as the main applicant would do. So that's again as in the student route for the postgraduate, these dependents are allowed. For the graduate route as well, the dependents will be allowed. Also, during the period of graduate route of 2 years or 3 years, the students can switch to work route at any point of time once they are able to secure job with any of the home office approved employer in UK. So that's about the graduate route, and this is the application process for the graduate route. This will be a mix of the online application as well as the app-based application. The students will need to make an application online for the graduate route, pay the application fees of £700 and IHS fees of £624. And then students wouldn't need to visit the visa application center. It will be an app-based biometric submission. They will be able to submit their biometrics on an app through an app. And these biometrics and the educational checks will be undertaken by the UKVI once the application and the biometrics are submitted, and the decision will be made. Once the graduate route visa is granted, it will be an e-visa. It wouldn't be stamped on the passport, or it wouldn't be like a PRP card. It will be an e-visa that will be granted. So that's more or less about the graduate route. I'll now move on to the important topic. Sorry, I just missed that. This process will take 8 weeks. And as I mentioned, this has to be done before the current student visa expires and once they have completed their course in UK. Unlike the current scenario, the priority and the super priority visa services for the graduate route will not be available. It will be a standard process which will take 8 weeks to process. Right. Now, the important topic, the current UK traffic light system and the travel guidelines I'll be covering. So I have just put in the different countries here. So most of the countries from Southeast Asia are in amber, but we do have Philippines, Myanmar, and Indonesia in red, and Singapore, Hong Kong, and Taiwan in green. So what does it mean to be in this list? I'll talk about that. This is the latest travel advice. So for all the countries, whether it's in green list, amber list, or red list, every traveler will need to have the COVID test done 3 days before they travel. That is 72 hours before the travel, and they need to carry the negative COVID report with them. Every traveler, whether from the amber, green, or red, will need to fill the passenger located form and carry this along themselves. So that's one of the requirement for all the travelers. After that, whatever you need to do, what are the kind of steps and guidelines you need to follow depends on where you're traveling from, where you've spent your last 10 days before traveling. So if it's a green list country, there is a requirement for 10 days quarantine on arrival. So you can quarantine at the place that you're staying. You need to fill that address in the passenger locator form and carry that with yourself, and you need to do that before you actually travel. For all the amber list countries, you can quarantine for 10 days at the place that you are staying, and you will have to pre-book your test for day 2 and day 8 before you actually travel. So the pre-booking has to be done before your travel. So that's about the green list and the amber list countries. And for the red list countries, the students will have to buy a government approved hotel package, which costs at around £1,750. So they need to mandatory quarantine themselves in the government approved hotel, which needs to be booked before 14 days before their travel. And this package will cover their accommodation, their transport, their meals, and the cost of the 2 tests that needs to be done on day 2 and day 8. So that's the mandatory requirement, and all the travelers from the respective listed countries will need to follow these guidelines. Just one more thing to add here, for the travelers who will be quarantining themselves. So not all the airports are open for that. There are certain ports, currently 7, which will have the quarantine facilities transport. So before your travel, please do check the ports where you need to travel. The names that I can remember is the Heathrow Airport, the London City Airport, Gatwick Airport, Bristol, and there are 3 more. So some more airports will be added. So you need to keep in mind that your port of arrival should be amongst these 7 ports that you're arriving at. So that's about the travel guidelines. Also, I want to talk about the vaccination because I've seen the queries about the vaccination as well. So irrespective of your vaccination, even if you've had the complete 2 dosage of the vaccination, all the travelers from the red list country and the amber list as well, they need to quarantine themselves. It's not an exemption if the travelers are vaccinated. Irrespective of the vaccination, the students will need to quarantine themselves. Right, so moving on. So this is almost my last slide. So this is the general advice for all the students. Student visas, as you are already aware, we have replaced the Tier 4 visa with, it's called as student visas now, and which is more simpler. It has the simpler requirement. It is equal for everyone. It gives equal opportunities for all the overseas students to apply for the visas. It gives extended time. It was 3 months earlier that they can apply for the visas ahead of the course start date. Now they can apply 6 months ahead of the course start date. So it gives a lot of flexibility as well. We have given flexibility last year to all the students. They were able to continue with the studies with the remote and their online studies as well. With the introduction of the graduate route, it's definitely leading to more of the opportunities for the students to gain maximum experience. Right, and just a bit about the interviews. The interviews, if the students are called for the interviews, they need not be to panic or have that fear in their mind. It's just to ensure and to satisfy the visa officer whether the students are aware as to why they have chosen the particular university, why UK is the destination for their studies, and what are their career ambitions. So if at all they're called for the interviews, it's just a simple assessment whether it's a genuine student and is able to speak and understand English. Right, so that is all from UKVI, and if you have any questions, I'll be taking them at the end of this session. Back to Hyan, please.
Thank you, Divya. Yeah, your section is very useful, and we receive a lot of questions for you, and we will leave until the end, so you will answer all the people here. Now, I would like to introduce you to Dale Winskin from Boarding School Association, who will give you information about how UK school welcome international students to this academic year. Dale, over to you.
Yeah, great, lovely, thank you. So welcome everybody, and just to explain who I am and where I'm from. So I'm, as you can see on the slide, Director of Safeguarding, Professional Development and Accreditation at the Boarding Schools Association, and Boarding Schools Association has 600 member schools in 36 countries, and more relevant to this is that 480 of those schools are the boarding schools in the UK, and almost all of the major boarding schools, in fact I think all of the major boarding schools and almost all of the boarding schools in the UK are members of the Boarding Schools Association. And so they will have had regular updates on matters to do with coronavirus from us since probably January 2020 was when we issued our first update, and we're updating them regularly. And at the moment, we're working very closely with them to establish what the rules are and what the guidance is for schools for September. So I'm going to be talking about the situation at the moment. I'm going to be covering a little bit of the same ground as Divya, but obviously I'm going to be looking at it from a school perspective. And some of the rules that apply to over 18s are slightly different for under 18s, particularly around the arrangements for quarantining, and I'm hoping to cover all of that for you. A bit of this was mentioned right at the beginning. The current situation in the UK is we are opening up the economy. We are opening things up. I was in London yesterday, and life isn't back to normal. In particular, you notice in London that there are no tourists. It's very different from that perspective, but life is very much getting back to normal. So I think the key message from us to all of those who are wanting to come to study in the UK in 2021-2022 is they will have, hopefully, one can never tell with the virus, but they will have hopefully a much more normal experience than the experience that has been had over the last 12 to 18 months. And just some statistics, almost 60% now of the adult population are fully vaccinated, of the population is vaccinated, and 71% of adults. 70% have had at least one vaccination, and 88% of adults, and 87% of adults are now have antibodies either from having had the virus or from having been vaccinated. And there has been a third wave. We've just gone through the third wave, but numbers have in the last week started to fall, and it looks as if the situation will continue to improve through the rest of the summer. The situation then regarding children is that there is, in the UK, there is no routine vaccination for under 18s. The government has looked at the data and the balance of risk through vaccination against the balance of risk through catching the virus, and has prioritised, therefore, for young people, giving the vaccination to those aged 12 and over who have particular health conditions. However, we have had talks with members of Department for Education in the UK and with other departments, and we do know that if there is to be at some point in the future routine vaccination of children, there is absolutely no reason why that would not be rolled out to students who had come to the UK from other countries. So if vaccinations are available in the UK to children generally, those in schools will certainly be able to get them, but there's no routine plan to do that. This is being regularly reviewed. And then the next big question that we've had really quite a lot over the last 12 months is whether UK schools are safe. And to address that, this time last year, we developed something called the BSA COVID Safe Charter, which is a list of rules that we required schools to follow, and the vast majority of our member schools signed up to that. I know many of you will be familiar with that. And really, it was all about ensuring that schools did everything they possibly could to protect children from the moment they arrived in the UK at the airport, that there were safe procedures for collecting them from the airport, safe procedures for transporting them to school, and then safe procedures in school for looking after them. And schools did a huge amount over the last 12 months to make that possible. Schools, particularly boarding schools, were doing widespread testing well before it becoming government policy. Many schools actually bought their own testing equipment so that not only could they use the lateral flow tests, but they also could do the more robust kinds of testing that are done in government and other laboratories. Schools also worked really hard on their responses for positive cases in terms of isolating those who were positive. Many school medical centres had different areas set aside for dealing with routine issues, day-to-day issues, bumps and scrapes and sprains, and a separate area for dealing with COVID cases. And the vast majority of our schools had really robust procedures in place for that. Schools have also had really robust procedures around masks and face coverings, and we've been very clear with all of our members that it's an absolute expectation that even if the point comes where masks and face coverings are not required in schools, and we believe that it's likely in September that it will not be a requirement in schools for children to wear masks or face coverings, we have stressed to our schools that it's absolutely fundamental that they should allow young people to wear a mask or a face covering if they wish to do so, and if it makes them feel more comfortable. Schools have undergone extensive reviews of their cleaning and sanitising procedures, and all schools have had to comply with requirements not only from government but also those set out in the BSA Charter. And in effect, schools have changed an awful lot of procedures to help keep pupils safe. They've had systems of bubbles where pupils are put into particular groups so that the amount of mixing has been reduced. And these procedures have been really successful. And a lot of schools, a lot of boarding schools in particular, managed to get through the vast majority of the year without too many problems and to keep the numbers of cases low. And we're expecting that as necessary, schools will take appropriate procedures again in the autumn if necessary, but we do believe that from September the school experience will probably include some testing. There'll probably continue to be a little bit of distancing. There'll certainly be enhanced sanitation and sanitising and cleaning procedures, but we do feel that for the majority of pupils, it will be much more of a normal experience compared to that which they've had for the last 12 months. Just to go over the ground on travellers, and you had a little bit of this in the first presentation. So yes, everyone travelling will need a negative test within 3 days of departure. I think it was highlighted that those tests must meet the UK government requirements, and those requirements are listed in the guidance that you can find on the website. And if you have any issues with that, my contact details are on the final slide. Do get in touch and we can help you with that. You will have read about the UK recognising or planning to recognise vaccinations from other countries. At the moment, that's restricted to the EU and to the US. We haven't heard yet any plans to recognise any vaccinations from outside the EU or the US. But if that comes to pass, it obviously will make things easier for a lot of people, and we will let you know as that happens. So for all travellers, as mentioned, you need to do the pre-departure test. You need to fill in the passenger locator form. Now, the procedures for filling in the passenger locator form are different for pupils who are attending a boarding school than they are for those who are over 18 and attending a university. And schools have been sent a lengthy guidance letter by the Department for Education, and also a letter of authorisation for travel by the Department for Education, and schools will be sharing that letter and those details with pupils, and will be guiding them through the details of how to fill in the passenger locator form, because for example, the over 18s who are having to quarantine in government hotels will book a government hotel package, but for under 18s who are quarantining in schools, they will be filling in the passenger locator form slightly differently. So schools will be giving advice about how to fill in that form. And as was mentioned in the first presentation, everyone will have to do a day 2 test. And just to be aware, we have members in England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland, and the rules are very slightly different in different parts of the UK. They are pretty cohesive. They're very much similar right the way across the UK, but just to be aware, there are some slight differences. And of course, the other issue for those who are going to school in Scotland, Wales or Northern Ireland is quite often they will land at Heathrow or Gatwick or one of the English airports and will then have to cross into Wales, Scotland and Northern Ireland. So the situation there can be different. So do contact schools and get in touch with schools and ask for guidance about exactly what's required, and we will always be able to help at BSA if you need our assistance with that. So for those on the red list, this is one of the questions we're frequently asked is, can parents and carers travel to the UK to quarantine with young people? And it's clear that boarders can travel to the UK from red list countries because of their status under the residential or the residence arrangements and through their visa arrangements, but parents and carers cannot travel unless they have a particular reason why they are allowed to do so. For example, if they have a British passport, it would be different. But if they haven't got a British passport, then parents and carers cannot travel to the UK from red list countries. And to be absolutely clear that at the moment, if pupils travel to the UK from red list countries and they are under 18, then the quarantine is in school. And we expect that that applies also for those who have turned 18 after the 1st of September, but before their date of arrival. So if they have an early September birthday and they will turn 18 early in September, then we expect that they will still be allowed to quarantine in school if they were under 18 on the 1st of September this coming year. We're waiting for the guidance that's been in existence for the last 12 months to be updated to reflect that, but that's what we are expecting. But just because they are quarantining in schools does not mean it's an easier regime than quarantining in a government hotel. There's a lengthy guidance document that all schools have to follow, and it covers everything from the moment of arrival at the airport, how they are picked up, who picks them up, how they are able to stop at for a toilet break on the way to school. Very strict rules around that, strict rules around arrival at school and being quarantined in school. They are allowed, when they quarantine in school, they are allowed to quarantine with anyone who has arrived on the same day or immediately after them, so within a couple of days of their arrival. They are allowed to quarantine with those who have arrived with them or travelled at similar times, but the rules are really quite comprehensive. We've found it's worked really well in the last 12 months, and schools have done an awful lot of work. I mean, obviously, it's a very difficult situation, particularly for very young children, to be quarantining at all, but we have found that for those who need to do it, it does work. And the danger, of course, is that the red list can change from time to time, and we've seen that. So we need to be aware and flexible that red list quarantine might not apply to your country at the moment, but it could apply in the future, depending on how the situation works. And just to go through what that means, it's 10-day school quarantine, procedures for travelling to and from school, a test package purchased in advance from an approved provider, testing on day 2 and day 8, and those who have travelled together can be quarantined together. And again, the bit there about the test package purchased in advance, when they go through the passenger locator form and need to select their test package, we really urge contacting schools and being in touch with schools and asking about how to fill that form in and asking about how to select the right travel package, because the company that does the testing for hotel quarantine, which is the one which you will immediately see on the passenger locator form, does not do tests for school quarantine. School quarantine tests are done by different companies on an approved list, and you can see the approved list. It's available on the government website, but just to be aware that that's something that students will find complicated for the under 18s, and schools will have to help them through. Now, for amber list, and this is the situation that we are in at the moment, is you will have seen announcements that quarantine is not required for under 18s who are returning to the UK from amber list countries. We are urgently seeking advice from the government as to whether that applies to students in boarding schools or not. Yes, they are under 18. Yes, they are coming from an amber list country, but we are just checking with the government exactly what they mean, because some of the terminology, which has changed a little bit about being ordinarily resident in the UK, etc., leads us to believe that there is some lack of clarity about that. We know some schools have taken a view that it means they can avoid quarantine, but we haven't yet had that clarity from the government. So I do urge you, if you have pupils coming from amber list countries, that you make sure that they check the guidance with schools before they travel. Yes, they will also need the passenger locator form, and they will also need to do the day 2 and day 8 tests, but they can purchase a test to release option, which will release them from quarantine on day 5 if they're coming from one of those countries. If they are on the green list, there's no quarantine, but as was mentioned earlier, they will still need to fill in the passenger locator form. They will still need to do the day 2 test. And of course, as was mentioned earlier, lists can and do change with little notice. For example, if I go through the list of countries which you've already seen, Taiwan, for example, is on the green watch list at the moment, which means that pupils from Taiwan may find that by September arrives, the time September arrives, Taiwan has moved to the amber list, and the amber list applies. And also there is a particular circumstance where the situation with France is different from other countries. France does not have the full amber list exemptions that the other countries have, and there has been a suggestion in the media this morning that the arrangements for France, the sort of extra amber list requirements for France, may be applied to some other countries at some point. So the lists were last updated on the 28th of July. They're reviewed regularly. So please do not take the situation as it applies today on the 30th of July as being the situation that will be in place when the students eventually travel. And the other thing I would like to highlight, and this is the top point on this slide, is we've had some issues in the past with pupils routing via different countries. A number of pupils use Turkish Airlines and route via Istanbul. Others use the Gulf Airlines through either Emirates or Etihad or Qatar, and both UAE and Qatar, and indeed also Turkey, are currently on the red list. And if they are transiting through those countries, then they will need to follow the red list procedures on arrival in the UK. So do please be aware of that. It's not just the country that they're coming from, it's also the countries they are routing through. And then thinking about the situation in schools in September, schools are being encouraged to continue testing, but schools do anticipate, I've seen this as one of the fairly frequent questions, schools do anticipate a full return to face-to-face teaching from the start, but also schools are now used to having rapid responses in place. And if there are any cases, and if groups of pupils have to be isolated for a period of time, then there are very strong procedures now for doing online learning, and all schools have enhanced those procedures over the last 12 months and can respond really, really quickly to any cases. The other thing about healthcare provision, many schools do have their own testing facilities. All pupils will have access to the rapid daily tests that can be done. You can pick them up from any pharmacy in the UK now without any problem at all. And so all schools will have ready access to getting pupils tested as frequently as they feel it is necessary. And all schools have really now got very tried and tested COVID procedures that they've worked on for the last 12 months. And so a couple of things just to finish. The guidance on the green, red and amber list can be just checked on the government website. It has the list and all the details of what's required for each route. There is also separate guidance with the title you can see at the bottom there, boarding school students from red list countries, the quarantine arrangements for those. If you wanted to check that, if you are having pupils coming from red list countries, that document is available. And also, if you want any other questions that don't get answered during this webinar, do please contact me, dale@boarding.org.uk or bsa@boarding.org.uk, and either I will get back to you or one of my team, including Caroline Nixon, who was unavailable to do this today, who is our international director. Caroline, many of you will know, she leads our BSA certified agents and certified guardian schemes and has been in touch with many of you. So do please get in touch with us, and either I or Caroline will get back to you and help you with your inquiry. That's it from me, but I'm sure there'll be some questions that I can pick up on in due course.
Thank you, Dale, for your very useful information. Yeah. Now it's time for us to listen from Kira Newby, Executive Committee of British University International License Associations. Yeah, Kira will brief us about how UK university prepare to welcome international students to the UK in this academic year. Yeah, over to you, Kira.
Hi, thank you, Ian. Right, let me share my slide deck. Hi, hello, good afternoon. Well, good morning for me, good afternoon for a lot of you. It's a pleasure to be here today. My name's Kira Newby. I am a member of the British Universities International Liaison Association, also known as BWILA. Excuse me. We are a voluntary organisation that supports international officers in universities throughout the UK. I also am head of international undergraduate recruitment at the University of Bath, but I am here today talking about BWILA, obviously. So first of all, why the UK? And I wanted to start with this to really stress to you that things are looking positive for autumn. We know that it's been a very stressful year and a half for everyone, but we are looking to combine a campus experience with flexibility this autumn to make sure that we are responding to any kind of changes that might happen. As Dale mentioned, everyone's learned a lot over the past year in how best to handle this. The UK inevitably gives you access to world-leading experts, high quality teaching, high quality learning opportunities, huge level of support that I am going to talk about a little bit, whether it's academic or pastoral support. Of course, a wide range of universities, courses, specialism, and a really international network. So students are getting more than just a degree when they come to study in the UK. But we have really made sure, and it goes without saying, that universities throughout the United Kingdom put student safety first, and there are a range of measures that have been put into place to ensure that we can make sure that all our students feel safe and supported. So we've heard a lot already about the current situation. I did want to mention that social distancing now is a little bit devolved, so it's a little bit different in each of the nations. So England, Northern Ireland, Scotland and Wales do have their own rulings. As again we've already heard, figures do continue to be low and deaths continue to fall. Now, as you already heard, we have just gone through a third wave, but what is important to stress with that third wave was that while we were going through it, the level of symptoms and ailments that people were faced with due to COVID was much less serious than it had been in the past. So symptoms were becoming milder, which is also very positive. And we do continue to have some restrictions still in place. And the UK universities obviously will follow the government guidelines should anything change, but certainly we are seeing a very cautious return to normality step by step. So how are universities preparing? So there's a few changes that you will see. I'll talk first of all about quarantine support, and it's important that if you are supporting students who are going to study in the UK, that you have a look at the individual institution to see what that might be. A lot of universities are supporting students who have to go into government mandated red list hotel quarantine through subsidising the cost of that, or partially subsidising the cost of that. Now that will vary from institution to institution. I know, for example, at Bath we will pay that and we will refund students the red list quarantine, but I was speaking to a colleague at another university a few days ago where they're not reimbursing it, but their tuition fees are significantly lower, so they feel that there's a balance there. So it's certainly worth having a look at that as well. If you need to go into amber list quarantine accommodation, a lot of universities are providing that free of charge for students, and students can arrive much earlier than they would typically. I know at Bath we're allowing students to arrive at the university from the end of August, which is significantly earlier than normal. That quarantine support will also include a range of virtual activities. We know that if you do have to go into red list quarantine accommodation, or even amber on campus, for example, we want to make sure that you still have that opportunity to transition and settle into your new life in the UK and feel like you're part of a community at university. And so a lot of thought has gone into making sure that you still get to interact with your classmates and your and the Students' Union, and there are a huge range of different activities going on during that time depending on your institution. Now, a few changes you can expect to see on campus. Inevitably, social distancing may still be in place for throughout. You will see typically repurposed spaces. So the universities have generally thought about how we can make more study spaces for students to make sure that you've always got somewhere to go. If you need to study outside of your accommodation, maximising ventilation, staggering the start and end times of classes is something else that's been brought in to avoid mass rushes, hand sanitizer stations, one-way systems to restrict bottlenecking in places, and face masks available for you to pick up if you need to as well. I did mention briefly wellbeing support, but again, I would want to stress that the safety and security of anyone who is coming to study within our community is of paramount importance to us. And the UK's government official bodies for each region, such as the Office for Students in England, have got a mandate to protect all international students, and each university does have a student protection plan, which is really positive as well. So I'm just going to touch on this briefly because it is something that we are all really pleased with. We heard a little bit about it. We're so relieved that things have happened, but the graduate immigration route is finally here. This opened on July the 1st. There is an application fee of £700 for any students who are wishing to go down this route. Now, we're really happy, and this has come through some lobbying that Bwila have taken part in as well, but any existing postgraduates who started in autumn 2020 have until the 27th of September to enter the UK if they've ended up having to complete their studies out of the UK via distant learning due to COVID. And any students who started in autumn last year and have since left the UK but are still studying, they have to be in the UK by the end of their course in order to be eligible for this. And any students who are starting their course in this autumn, if they're doing a 12-month course, they've got until April the 6th to be learning face-to-face in the UK, and we would hope for them to get to the UK by that point. It's such an exciting time, and it's been such a relief to see that there's a little bit of flexibility in the arrival dates for the UK for this as well. I actually just got an email this morning from one of my students who I've worked with from Shanghai. She's been doing a degree in marketing at Bath, and she's just got a job in a really good marketing firm in London. So I'm really pleased to hear that. It's always good to hear some positive stories at this time. I did want to mention admissions. Now, if any of you are working with high school students who are planning undergraduate study anywhere in the world, you are probably aware that next week the week after next is A-level results day. We, as any university, is trying to be as flexible as possible as we prepare for this. There are many universities that are in clearing. Mine is not one of them. But a lot of universities do have places. It's worth keeping an eye out if you do have students who haven't made their grades or have exceeded expectations as well. If you feel like your student has some kind of mitigating circumstances, I think when I say that, I mean on top of, I think the whole world has lived in mitigating circumstances for the past year, but if they have anything in addition to the challenges that most young people have faced, then do contact the university and let them know as well. And if you are working with any postgraduate or prospective postgraduate students, there is still time for students to apply to many of those courses throughout the UK as well. I did want to touch on teaching and learning, a little bit about what that's looked like over the past year and a little bit of how that is going to look moving forward. This concept of blended learning has been successful. we all had to learn so quickly, regardless of our profession. I think we all had to learn how to use Zoom, how to deliver, the difference between engaging people in a virtual context compared to real life. We've gotten to a place where we can flip back to that mode. We want to make sure that there is as much face-to-face teaching as possible, but there has been millions invested in digital upgrades throughout the UK to make sure that the quality of teaching and learning is impeccable. And I really want to stress on that point of quality, because we do have very rigorous UK quality assurance guidelines that we have to adhere to in the UK. And whether your students are learning online in a virtual context or in person in face-to-face activities, the university has to ensure that we are meeting those quality assurance guidelines. Student feedback plays a massive role as well in universities throughout the UK, and this has really been taken into consideration as we started to plan for this upcoming year. One piece of feedback, for example, that we've had at Bath is that students do really want those face-to-face lectures, and they very much value that context of being in a lecture. So we've been looking into ensure we can offer that in a safe way, but they also want them to continue to be accessible online. So it's making sure that students have a bit more flexibility, and that kind of feedback is really, really important to us. We've also introduced throughout the UK a huge range of different support mechanisms with online training to enable students are ready and confident in using any of the different resources that they've had to get used to for ways of engaging during the pandemic. And finally, it goes without saying that studying in the UK, you have, of course, got access to world-leading experts, high-quality teaching and learning, and again, those opportunities to really develop that professional network as well. Now, I'm not going to talk too much about vaccinations because this has already been covered, but we have had a successful vaccination programme throughout the UK. Over half of the population have been fully vaccinated. Now, international students will be offered the vaccine. International students will need to register with a GP when they arrive in the UK. As you know, for part of the visa programme, you need to pay the NHS surcharge in order to get you your visa. That gives you access, as it does anyone in the UK, to any of the National Health Service facilities. So when students aren't currently registered with the UK general practitioner, they can get a temporary residency as soon as possible, and then that will allow them to get a vaccine as well. If students have received a first dose of a vaccine overseas, that's also available in the UK, they should get the same vaccine if they need a second dose. If they had a vaccine overseas that isn't available in the UK, then the doctor would then recommend the most similar alternative for the second dose. And of course, you do not need to be fully vaccinated to come to the UK. There is plenty of information available online as well about that. So just a few final points before from me, which is, just first and foremost, the most important thing: keep checking the information, see what's available. I think one thing that we've learned is over the past year and a half is that things can change very, very carefully. Very, very quickly, I should say. If you need to have confirmation that your course has resumed to face-to-face if you are arriving after having already studied, then please do that. Please just encourage your students to be organised, make some lists, make sure you know what you've got, what they need to have with them, because it is a little bit overwhelming this year, but we are here to support students, we're here to help them. We do also encourage students, if you do need quarantine accommodation, particularly if it's red list quarantine accommodation, book that when you book your flights as well. Thank you. Back over to you, Ian.
Thank you, Kira, for your section. It's really useful for agents and counsellors who attend the section today. And now it's time to listen from Uraiwan Samoli from British Council Thailand, who will share with you about British Council work to support Asian and counselor. Uraiwan, over to you.
Thank you very much, Kian. Hello, everyone. In my presentation, I'd like to highlight the British Council's work on supporting agents and counsellors. So apart from holding the event or the briefing session like this, we also have other support to agents and counsellors. First of all, we have run quite a lot of online courses, and we have one course available for agents and school counselor, and it is free of charge. The course content has been specially designed for agents and counselor, and it will cover information, for example, the benefits of studying in the UK, defining the skills, knowledge, and responsibilities needed to get a student on to the right course, and also information on student visas and the new graduate route. There will be also information on resources available to support you in giving advice to students. This free online course for agent and school counselor will be open for registration twice a year. And the next round of registration will be around in October. So please keep an eye on the communication from us. And now we are running a free online course for students called Prepare to Study and Live in the UK. So please encourage your students to enroll and take this course. There will be a lot of useful information for them to prepare themselves to study in the UK. This online course is free of charge, and it will take around 4 weeks to complete. And upon successful completion, students will receive a digital certificate. This online course is provided twice a year. We have the page on Study UK website. It is the COVID-19 FAQ. This is the information and answer to questions frequently asked by student, parents, agents, and also school counselors. And the information will be regularly updated. So please regularly check our website. We also produce a toolkit for agents, and this is a PDF document. There will be information and links to the resources that will be useful for you in giving advice to students. This is the brief information on how we can support you, agents and school counselors, in promoting UK education and giving advice to students and parents. Thank you very much for your attention. And if you want to find out more information about studying in the UK, we have the website studyuk.britishcouncil.org that you can find a lot of useful information. Okay, so I think that's all from me, and I think Hien is now ready for the Q&A session. We received a lot of questions today, so over to you, Hien.
Thank you, Uraiwan. Yes, we do receive a lot of questions today. It's over 70 questions we received up to now. And this brings us now to the Q&A section. I would like to start first with questions for Divya about the financial evidence. The question is, for Malaysia Thai students, do we have to show the financial proof as well? As I remember, Malaysia don't have to show financial proof anymore. Please advise.
All right, the slides that I've gone through, this is applicable for the global countries. So yes, the financial documents are required because they are the maintenance funds that needs to be shown before the student actually travel to UK. So the maintenance funds are required to be shown. Most of the Southeast Asia countries, they would need to show the funds. However, if there are certain exceptions, probably we can check the gov.uk link and see if there are any exceptions. I am not updated about the recent exception that they're talking about. It could be one of the countries wherein the financial documents are exempted.
Yeah, thank you, Divya. We have another questions about the graduate route. If the student study in Malaysia for 2.5 years, then transfer to the UK for only 1 centimeter, it means the final centimeter. With the student visa, can student apply graduate route? What is the validity of the graduate route visa? Do they automatically give out 2 year or 3 year for PhD?
Okay, so for the graduate route, if the student has enrolled for the studies in autumn of 2020 or January 2021, and they arrive in UK, in England, before 27th of September 2021, they will be eligible for the graduate route, irrespective of the semesters covered. So yes, if they are in UK before 27th September, they will be eligible. And if they are enrolling for this autumn, September 2021, and after this, so they need to be in UK before 6th of April 2022, and then again they will be eligible for the graduate route.
Yeah, thank you. If students take a placement program, placement year program at the university, does this deduct the number of years students can stay in the UK from 2 years to 1 year?
Not really. So it is if it's embedded in the course, the placement year. So, and they are completing their course after the placement is finished. So they will be eligible for the graduate route. It will be a complete period, which is 2 years for all the students and 3 years for the doctoral students. So the placement time does not impact the graduate route time.
Yeah, thank you, Divya. I have one question for Dale. For students over 18 years old coming to study A-level at a boarding school, can they quarantine at the boarding school rather than in a hotel? What is the minimum age for international students to enroll in a primary or secondary school in the UK?
In terms of the minimum age, there's no minimum age as such, as long as the school is prepared to take them. There's no minimum age as such. With regard to the over 18s, it's one of the things that we are waiting for complete clarity on. The situation earlier this year is that anyone who was under 18 on the 1st of September at the beginning of the school year, so anyone who at the start of the school year on the 1st of September was still 17, was able to quarantine in school. We haven't yet seen any change to that guidance. So at the moment, technically, anyone who was under 18 on the 1st of September 2020, according to the guidance, is still allowed to quarantine in school. But we think that over the summer, that guidance will be changed to make that 1st of September 2021. So my only certainty would be that anyone who is under 18 on the 1st of September should, according to the current rules, be able to quarantine in school. And I saw another related question about this with regard to the quarantine in hotels. It's absolutely clear that unless someone is accompanied, under 18s cannot quarantine in government hotels. There's no provision for quarantining in government hotels if you are under 18 unless you are accompanied. And that does cause a problem, obviously, if young people are travelling on their own. So if the school is unable to give them quarantine, then that does create an issue. So we think almost all of our schools are able to offer quarantine, but there are 1 or 2 schools where it's really difficult because they've got very small boarding provision or because of the way they're set up. So the school has to confirm that they are able to give quarantine because under 18s unaccompanied cannot quarantine in a government hotel.
Thank you, Dale. We have one question for Kira. Are university expecting full face-to-face instruction starting this year?
Yeah, excuse me, that's a really good question. It's a difficult one to answer. It's very much going to vary on the institution, but we are anticipating to be able to provide as much face-to-face teaching as is safe and possible. Now, I can give you an example at the University of Bath, where I work. We're looking, and again, it varies a little bit from course to course, but it's between 60 and 80% typically of face-to-face teaching to be taking place. Now, we do know as well that there will be some students who might not be able to get to the institution at the start of term, and if that is an issue, then they will be able to access online until it is safe for them to get to the UK. So it's very much a flexible approach. And with that, I will add as well that we know that being a student and being at university, it's not just about academics, it's also about being part of the community. So there will be opportunities for for students who can't come to take part in some virtual activities as well to help them settle in and be part of the community. Yeah. But I would definitely encourage you to have a look at each individual institution, because it will differ a little bit. And again, with courses, if you're doing a practical course and you've got a lot of lab time, for example, compared to something that's a bit more theoretical.
We have another, I think it's good questions for you, Kira. Most students from Japan are worried if they can make friends during their stay, and that is one of the biggest reasons they give up studying abroad or asking for deferral, or even their parents stop them to go. Does your university have specific support to Greek students?
Yeah, absolutely. It's really important, and it follows on from my last point as well, that transition to university is, you know, obviously you're doing this to better your future and to gain a qualification and to gain and grow academically and intellectually, but it's also about being part of a community, and that's so important to us. So I mean, we've got a huge different range of things. I mean, one little thing that I really love that we started last year at Bath was using an app called Umi, which is a way for students to sign up to the app to make friends and get to know people and things like that. Now, on top of that, the student societies have a huge range of different activities going on. So at Bath, for example, we have a big Freshers' Fair. Usually that's in person and you wander around and you can sign up to different clubs and societies. This year we're doing it virtually so that everyone can get access to it. And this is a really great way to try something new, to whether it's an activity, a sport, an international student society, something relating to your course. But there will be lots of opportunities for these to be as flexible as possible. And, you know, again, with wellbeing support and things like that, if you need some help with something related to wellbeing, you can access all of these facilities online as well as on campus. But yeah, that's a really good question, and it's something that's really important to us. But I would say absolutely not a reason to be deterred from study.
Yeah, thank you, Kira. We come back with Divya. I have another question for you. I would like to confirm the point. Graduate route doesn't lead to the settlement. As you know that a person can apply for settle in the UK if he or she have been in the UK legally for 10 continuous years. Is this 2 or 3 years in graduate route counted in this 10 years?
Okay, so in the graduate route, as I mentioned, it does not accrue to the settlement route. So since this is an unsponsored route, the settlement rights will only accrue if you are on a skilled work visa and you have been on the route for at least 5 years, or any long-term visa. So the student graduate route does not entitle or add towards the settlement rights for the students. Yeah. So that's the point here. So and that's what's specifically added as the clause for the graduate route.
Yeah. Thank you. Another question for you. For graduate route visa, I'm correct that the application can stay in the UK. One application being locked and waiting for the decision up to 8 weeks, despite student visa have expired.
Okay, yes. So on the date of application, when you're applying online, your student visa should still be valid. It it may be possible that during those 8 weeks, your student visa would expire, so that's all right. However, when you're applying for your graduate route visa, your visa should still be valid. So that's the point here. It could run out maybe in next 2 or 3 days. That's all right, but it shouldn't have run out on the date of application.
Yeah, thank you, Divya. I have another question for Dale. Will international students aged from 12 to 16 years old be able to get vaccine in the UK? If yes, when?
That's a really big question. At the moment, if they are aged 12 to 16, they can get vaccinated in the UK if they have certain health conditions and it's recommended by the doctor. In this case, this would be the doctor who is linked to the school. Most schools have a local surgery or a local practice that they work with, and many of them have doctors who visit schools on a regular basis. So if the school doctor recommends that they should be vaccinated because they have a particular health conditions, then in the same way as British students can, they will be vaccinated. But there's no routine vaccination in the UK at the moment for anyone under 18. So there is it's being looked at on a regular basis. We know from contact with government that it's something they are regularly reviewing, and it may well be that things will change. But at the moment, yes, if they have particular health conditions, but it's not being offered more generally at the moment.
Yeah, I have another question about the vaccine. Could students with a short-term student visa be vaccinated in the UK? I'm not quite sure whether this question will be due by Divya or Dale.
Divya, I don't know, but my view would be that if they are at the right age and are able to access it, I can't see any reason why they would be stopped if they've paid their health premium.
Yes, of course. So if they are adults, as you mentioned, if they are above 18 and they have, the first point here would be short-term students, whether they are there for the English language courses, because the short-term courses are issued under standard visitor visas. So if they are traveling from a red listed country, they wouldn't be able to travel for the short-term course. However, if they are traveling from a green listed country or an amber country, and they are traveling for more than 6 months, for which they pay their IHS fees. So if they have paid their IHS fees and they're covered under NHS and are above 18, they will be able to access the vaccination in UK.
Yeah. A final questions about vaccine. What about the vaccination from Singapore? The vast majority will be taken Pfizer or Moderna. Will this not be recognized?
We hope it will be. It's not at the moment. It's only this week. So the situation a week ago is that only those vaccinated under the National Health Service in the UK would be recognised. That's now been extended to the US and to EU vaccinated people. We haven't heard anything. I don't know if either of the others have. Any of the others have. We haven't heard anything about vaccinations from other countries, but I think if it's going to happen anywhere, it will be countries like Singapore with very low rates and very high vaccination, but we haven't heard anything yet.
Yeah, thank you. I have one question for Kira. I'm guessing that some people do not follow the guideline rule on social distancing, wearing masks, etc. Do they have some penalty? How will students be protected from those who don't follow the rule?
Well, that's a good question. I think you know, essentially the guidelines have been relaxed quite a lot in the UK. Just as of last week, it was no longer a requirement to wear a mask. However, what I will say is that most people are genuinely continuing to take this quite seriously. So, you know, when you are walking around city centres or on the university campus, as I was last week, people are still wearing a mask. Now, when it's you know, inevitably wherever you are in the world, you might come across somebody who isn't breaking, who isn't following a protocol on anything, but certainly around campus, we will be continuing to encourage mask wearing inside certain buildings, and there is a lot of signage up around that as well. So the best that I can do is provide reassurance that universities, and you know, as Dale mentioned earlier with schools, they're quite keen to ensure that if students want to continue to wear a mask, they will. I mean, I think one thing that we've certainly seen over the past year and a half is that the pandemic has made us all very much value our health and take a very cautious move forward when we are in social areas.
Yeah. I have another question for the do school offer classes with smaller number of students now by concern of social distance?
The answer is last year, yes, certainly schools had all sorts of arrangements for greater distancing. Some of them, and again, obviously we went through different periods where different year groups were not allowed in school. The situation that we're expecting from September is that schools will go back to their normal arrangements, but a large number of schools, of boarding schools in particular, are already have class sizes which are much smaller than the national average. So and many of them have buildings and facilities that allow more distancing than before. So I think we're moving in the UK into a different stage of the pandemic where we are trying to get back to a more normal way of living, but it's a cautious normal, if I can say that. I mean, I absolutely endorse what was being said about people still being very cautious. Many people still wearing masks, even though there is no longer, since the 19th of July, no one in the UK has to wear a mask other than in particular circumstances, but the vast majority of people still are, and it's the same in school. And no one in the UK, well, it's different in other parts of the UK. In England at the moment, and in other parts of the UK from early August, no distancing is specifically required by the government, but many institutions, many shops, many businesses, the transport systems are still putting requirements in place for people to follow, and most people are following them. So we've moved into a different phase, which the advantage is that it means that pupils have a much more normal boarding school experience. Many of the activities they enjoy, the sport, the music, the drama, and I know it's going to be the same with the universities, are going to be opening back up again, which means they'll get a much more normal boarding school experience. But of course, it does mean that there will be possibly more mixing and less distancing than is currently the case in most parts of Asia.
Yeah, thank you, Dale. For onshore students who apply for continuing courses, start at high school to bachelor or bachelor to master, etc. If they can't find a flight ticket back to their home country, they might need to apply for exceptional assurance. Question 1, which kind of document do they need to provide? Question 2, how long does it take to process the assurance?
Okay, so probably this is about the visa extension to stay in UK if they're not able to travel back to their own country. So yes, they can, while they're in UK itself, apply for the extension of the visas. It again takes 6 to 8 working weeks to process the visa, and they can mention the exceptional reasons for this, and they were not able to travel because of the lockdown and the travel restrictions. So it'll take again 4 to 6 weeks, and the visa needs to be applied as the extension of the current visa.
Yeah,
I hope I've understood that correctly.
Thank you, Divya. So, thank you very much on behalf of British Council and attendee. I would like to thank you all the panelists for taking your time to join us and to share very useful and informative information to all our attendees today. And for all agent and counselor, I know that you send us a lot of questions. We will try our best to have this answer after the event, and we'll find a way to send the answer to you after the event. Now, once again, thank you very much for panelists and all attendees, and I wish you all the best.